The following is a presentation in the Controltrends podcasting network.
Hi, this is Eric Stromquist. Welcome to Control Talk Now, your HVAC and smart building controls podcast and video cast for the week ending June 2nd, 2019. This is episode 318, where we talk about all things smart building controls, HVAC controls, and pretty much whatever else we want to. But what would a show be without your host and mine? The man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, globe-trotting, Russian, Uber-driving control man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the one and only Kenny Smyers. Kenny, welcome home and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. You're right. We did some globe-trotting, but you were there as well. Maybe not in the Russian Uber part, but it was really neat. I got to see the Russian Ubers. The joke was that the Russian tank was the Russian Uber, but they actually had Russian Uber cars that were immensely pretty cars, maybe Mercedes, but they were painted yellow and had Uber in big black bold letters, Uber. And so when you said Russian Uber, I have a photo that maybe I'll show.
No, it was the big tank. That was the joke. I saw Kenny taking a Russian Uber, and there's a big tank that goes by the Uber, and I'm going, there it is. That's the tank.
Well, yeah, it was a really interesting thing. They were practicing the May 9th ceremony that they were having, and they had unannounced military convoy that came into the Red Square, and we were just leaving, and it was an amazing experience. But
well, yeah, and listen, Kenny, I tell you what, we got a lot to talk about. We got a fabulous guest coming on, but this is a very special episode 318, June 2nd, 2019. Mark it down, because this is the first episode. Well, we've had people ask us, can we sponsor the show? Can we be part of the show and sponsor it? And we've always just sort of said no, but we've changing that up. And we have our first sponsor for our first show. And how about telling our community about our first sponsor?
Eric, I'd love to. DG Lux, now offered by Lucid. These guys are the masters of graphic design and data visualization for buildings. We knew them back when they put data visualization in front of everybody on center stage, how important it was, and they did it as well as anybody in the business. But so DG Lux is a leader in visualization for buildings. They solve unique building needs in a single unified interface with custom visuals and a single unified presentation. What we're offering here is, if you sign up for a 30-day trial of their user-friendly drag and drop editor, Project Assist, by clicking on the URL that we'll have on the show notes. It's dglux.com/controltrends.
Right. It's actually, there's a banner ad on the side of the Controltrends site. You click there, it'll take you right there. And again, Kate, I am so excited, because if you've been following Controltrends for a while, these are old friends, innovative friends. We finally used to call them the Men in Black back in the day, Eugene Mazzo and Arthur Adler and the rest of the team. These guys have been around for a long time. I am so pumped up about the new stuff that they're coming out with. They have retooled, re-geared up. They've been working all along doing incredible stuff. And man, if you get a chance to check their graphics out, take the 30-day trial. You got nothing to lose. These guys are innovative. They understand our industry. They've been in our industry. So I'd encourage you to check them out.
Well, and we said that the data is the gold, the new crude oil in our industry. But what they give you is they leverage all your data sources in a single unified development environment, meaning that the different C-level players must have this information. And DG Lux is the best way to get it there.
And I don't care what people say, Kenny, and I might be being politically incorrect when I say this, but looks matter. And they have the most beautiful graphics I've ever seen. So with that, check those guys out. And Kenny, let's get on with the show, big dogs. So talking about beauty, man, we just got back from Amsterdam and Rome. We were at the EASYIO Global Conference. So first things first, congratulations to Johan Chakelrod, his team, to Gina Elliott, to Mike Martian, to the rest of our friends at EASYIO for another fabulous, fabulous conference. What were your takes on the conference, buddy?
Well, again, every year or every World Conference, we've seen this thing boost up in technology. I remember the first time we saw the FG32, then the FG32 Plus, then we had the FS32, and now we're seeing more innovation with the FW series. They took the lead in the wireless technology and the integration, and they came out with the wireless FW8, which for 8 inputs, outputs, and then FW 14 inputs and outputs, and then we saw the VAV. So we got a chance to sit there in front of the European players, the people from all over the world. Actually, I say European, but they were from Australia, South Africa, Malaysia, just places I can't even remember because it's such a global event. But they did a good job because it was held in a very interesting, unique place, a historic place, Amsterdam. There was just tons of fun in that regard. Just the beautiful buildings, the canals, just an extraordinary European city. But then they got down to business. Like you said, Johan and Mike came out. They did a presentation. You could see just the pride of ownership exude from both of these guys. They showed their growth on a pie chart, or not pie chart, on an ascending chart, and it just seemed to double almost every year. But what they have projected for 2020 is spectacular growth. And they did some of the case studies and presentations of why that growth is so evident. And one was Battersea, which was a remarkable project, but they had the man in charge of that project as one of the keynote speakers. And he went down into a granular level explaining how they've now come up with a selection tree on how the cost, experience, and everything is so important. But once you get over a certain standard and technology is evident, and regardless of the length of time and the partnership and whatever, if it meets their spec and it's the lowest installed cost, it's going to be selected because the technology is changing. And we heard a new term, perhaps it's new, I might have even said before, but EASYIO has had an IP controller since day one, and maybe one of the first ones to implement it. I think I heard an interesting presentation where the old first Jace was an IP controller back in 2000, whatever. But the IT-based industry, IT-based automation, IT-based building automation, it was remarkable that they showed their presentation where the EASYIO controllers were going right up into the network. There were no intermediates, no structural steps into a field level controller to supervisor controller to a front end, the front end to a front end to the cloud, back and so forth. It's going directly into the IP world, the network, and how they're taking every measure to have a very secure controller, the communication, and working with IT. Then we thought we have a plea coming out of North America. Get smart. Scott Cochran said, get to the IT world, be friends, understand it, talk the talk, and be friendly to it. Well, over in Europe, the IT people, in the case of what we use a master systems integration for, where they spearhead to make sure that there's no individual silos and that everything's going to come on a network, and they have that job to do that and make sure that everybody, what they're prepared to put into that building, must be communicated, must be integrated, must be smart. Well, they use the IT department to run that, to be supervising that ultimate result. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. And another warning flag thrown on the field that, hey guys, IT is not something to ignore. Like cybersecurity, it's real. If you go into it with a positive attitude and you're willing to invest in it, it's going to provide handsome dividends.
No, very much so, very much so. And talk about being able to see it. We actually recorded virtually every one of those sessions is on the Controltrends YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe to that if you haven't already. We'll get some of these up on the Controltrends site. But like we've been saying, the content's coming at us so quickly, especially the visual stuff, that YouTube is the quickest way for us to get it to you. So again, there's a link to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll also get as much of this as we can to you on Controltrends. But Kenny, I tell you what, Europe was a fantastic trip. Kenny and I went down to Rome after that. We drew some correlations to, like we always do, to Caesar and Brutus and IT and OT and how our world is. But if you think about just sort of the correlations between that civilization and how long it went on and how many changes they went through. And you think about the relatively, let's talk about the controls industry, how small that is by comparison. So if history teaches us nothing else, it teaches us that nothing changes but the changes. And we can learn that from history, that you have to adapt, or Brutus comes and stabs you and you die. So as an example, but yeah, we tried to make it entertaining. We got some really cool footage of everything from the Forum to the Trevi Fountain to Kenny eating gelato, really good stuff.
Well, yeah, and the Brutus analogy there is that the technology could be your friend or it could be a nemesis. But I just want to go over the real quick, the faculty members that attended here, so to speak. The gentleman I was referring to, the Phase 2 director, was Adrian Forget. He's the Battersea Power Station Development phase 2 director. Tom Randall, head of buildings for optimization services, Verco Global. Great presentation. Severine Damoud, she's a student competitive winner. EASYIO sponsored a young gun type of event. That wasn't the term they used, but they were recognizing a young engineer who was doing research work for sustainability. And Severine won, and she did her presentation.
It was phenomenal.
Very interesting. Was that?
It was phenomenal. It really.
Yeah, I mean, they took a building, the top floor of a building, and they had a hydroponic growth. It was based on water, and it was based on growing things that produced oxygen for the building occupants and CO2 for the plants. It was an incredible exchange of natural forces and just remarkably intuitive. Lim Hoon Chat, CTO, EASYIO. Again, the EASYIO has just always set a new standard on technology. They're now getting into MQQT protocol, and it's being used by several of their customers in Europe. And we got to see how that now comes in, and there's an MQQT driver by Tritium. So that the world's coming up with another presentation of information, shorter, faster, quicker. And Tommy Hagenes, Managing Director, Energy Controls AS. Tommy is a young gun from way back, but he had a very distinguished gray beard and very handsome guy.
George Clooney a lot.
Right, but very brilliant in many regards, but he's totally IoT. And anything that gets in the way of that, it's like water. It's not going to work. So any of this built-in proprietary stuff or whatever, he believes that the natural forces will find a way around it very quickly and get to where it belongs. Richard Reed, we finally got Richard Reed his Controltrends trophy from 2017, where he was he won most advanced consultant in our Controltrends awards voting, and we were able to give him that in person. And what a remarkable guy he was. What was your thoughts about Richard Reed?
Was very impressed. He definitely deserved the trophy. Very articulate. And again, we have his presentation videoed. It's on the YouTube channel. It's definitely worth checking. I think we might have posted that on Controltrends. We should definitely post that one on Controltrends.
We did, yeah. But and then we had a guest speaker, Don Quackernut, and he did a very interesting presentation about bureaucracy, and it was about safety on roofs. From his condominium where he lived up on a maybe 20th floor of a building, he was able to look down over a certain part of the city, and he was curious because he saw the installation of a tripwire, safety wire, but it actually served as well as a tripwire too, if you weren't paying attention. But it was to be safer, and then to get up on the roof, they put in these enclosures around the ladder so he couldn't fall off the ladder. And so he's watching this and this incredible investment of money and whatever, and how after they get it, nobody uses it because it was a pain in the butt. And by the time they were only up there on the roof for 10 minutes, and it took them 20 minutes to put all the safety gear on to go up for 10 minutes, so they just ignored it. But he was remarkably.
It was a Dutch Jerry Steinfeld, to put it in perspective. So, it took Kenny a little bit to warm up to him, and he eventually got to be funny, but it took him a while to get there. But he had some really good points. But Dutch Jerry Steinfeld, he was about 6'9".
Yeah.
So anyway, he was a pretty good. We got to talk to him after the show. He was a cool dude. But
what was the cathedral theme he was doing? How he showed all his cathedrals. His hobby, his passion, is he visited all the cathedrals, certain types of cathedrals in Western Europe.
Well, then day 2 they had great technicals training, and that was good too. So, Kenny, all in all, it was a great trip. Congratulations again to the team at EASYIO. Kate, if you want to know more about those guys, we have links to the website. But we also have a training series on the Controltrends website. There's an EASYIO logo on the right-hand side of the page. You click on it, and it'll take you to 6 or 7 training videos. And, you go through those things, and you're good to go. You're ready to start. There's be some updates and stuff like that, but I think you get an idea for the power of that controller and the simplicity of it. And these guys are innovative. And, part of their strategy, Kenny, is, hey, let's not invent anything we don't have to. So instead of, like, for example, building a controller and then putting a router on it, they'll buy a router and put a controller into it. So it's a little different philosophy, but Lim is who we mentioned before, the chief designer of these products, is very practical. He's brilliant, and it shows up in their products.
Well, sure does. And we have a Control Talk interview with you did a remarkable interview with Lim Hoon Chat, where he talks about how he grew up and what he was exposed to with technology. They built their own televisions, just out of absolute necessity, and he's worked his way through all the universities. And Actually has a couple patents to his credit, and worked for a long while with Tritium. And so he's an accomplished mind, and force in our building automation industry. And so it's no surprise he's coming up with these great controllers, but they're really proud of the FTO4. And this is a new IoT device that doesn't have a controller building automation connotation. This is an IoT device. You can use it for whatever you want to control 2 inputs and 2 outputs, and it's remarkable. Whether you're going to do shade control, it's up to your own device, but the cost and the implementation is remarkably simple. And that's where, too, they're going with the MQQT.
Yeah, it's less expensive than taking your best friend to coffee at Starbucks. So it's good stuff. But hey, Kenny, talking about good stuff and talking about remarkable individuals, let's bring our guest on. How about introducing him?
Eric, I'd love to. We have one of the most formidable voices in the industry, over 50 years of experience, and yet every time Ken puts out a new article, a new edition, it brings new insight into our industry, and it's really moved us all along. It's really moved the needle as far as bringing IT into the forefront of our industry. We'd like to welcome the owner-editor of AutomatedBuildings.com, Mr. Ken Sinclair. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Welcome, Ken.
Thank you very much, guys. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, we love having you, my friend. And the June issue is out. We're going to get to that in a little bit later. But listen, you've been traveling a lot. We've been traveling a lot. There's been, I kind of think of it as the spring season of conferences, if you will. We talked ad nauseum last time about Controltrends. But since then, we've been to Haystack Connect, and Kenny and I have been to EASYIO. So I'd like to get your thoughts on Haystack after having a week or two to ponder it.
Yes, great event, great venue. Actually took my daughter and granddaughter down with us to enjoy the great resort while I was at the convention. A very close, intense Haystack. The community is stronger, and what some of the folks are doing with Haystack is amazing. I was also very impressed with the keynote speaker who did the you know what you know, and you know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know. And if we kind of ponder that, I think that's a pretty good description of our moving forward in our industry right now. Is there's just all this stuff we don't know because we're moving into the IoT space. And stuff that is known to them is not known to us. So I think it was a really good theme, and I thought he did a great job of pulling that into the Haystack.
Cool.
The other one was...
Hang on real quick, Ken, because you said 2 things I want to spend a little more time on, 2 really profound points, and then remember this third one you were going to make. The first one was you mentioned you saw some super impressive things at Haystack. Could you give us an example of 1 or 2 of those? I know there were a lot of them because there were a lot of them there for me too.
The pitch fests were amazing. I found them extremely entertaining, and actually as a format for presenting information rapidly, I have to applaud John and Mark. That was a great idea. And the pitch fest that stuck in my mind was our contributing editor, Zach, telling us about how he's taken his little Raspberry controller to the next level, and it is now Haystackable, and is basically speaking the protocol. That was kind of an interesting concept. Another one that caught me was Intel. The fact that Intel has actually supporting Haystack, I found that incredibly enlightening. And of course, the Siemens folks were all there with their purchase of J2 and Comfy, are also incredibly strong supporters of Haystack. So all of that gave me a real warm feeling of the tremendous success Haystack has actually achieved in the last 8 years.
Well, they really have, Ken. For our community who wasn't there, the Pitch Fest was kind of along the lines. I haven't seen it, but I think there's a show called Shark Tank where basically people have a limited amount of time to present their concept and their idea. So everybody was on the clock when they had to do their pitch, if you will. And it was really phenomenal, the stuff that they were coming up with. And, a couple of things that impressed me was Johnson has, with their FX, had just introduced their automatic tagging convention where they could add Haystack tags automatically. That was really impressive. Tritium, one of the guys that talked from Tritium was talking about how they use the tagging and how easy it was to do. So to your point, I think the community has really come a long way. And when you talk about a concept, you talk about communities of practice and the co-competition, because you got different competitors there that are contributing to a greater cause. And there was sort of that esprit de corps that was almost palatable there, that, in the past it was kind of like, maybe we can make this work. But to me, there seems to be there was a sort of a level of certainty, like, okay, this has happened and is going to go forward. Did you feel that too?
Very much so. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was probably going to be one of my next comments, is where we used to go to and talk about how, talk about why you should use Haystack. It had gone way beyond that. They were all there showing how they were using Haystack and how it is going to be part of the next products. The other thing that flashed in my mind as I was listening to some of those pitch fests and seeing this brought down to a chip level and to a Raspberry level, the idea of OEM equipment coming to the site Haystack tagged. It's just like, oh my God, that's the way this is going to happen. Is somebody's going to buy one of these new controllers because it's cheap and it's incredibly powerful and it's incredibly connected. They don't even have to know what this is, just like they don't have to know what BACnet is. They just have to know that it's Haystack enabled. And so now I've got my chiller, I slide it across the floor, it wirelessly wakes up and has its Haystack tags and joins in the fray because of that. So yeah, that's tremendous success in 8 years.
Yeah, I want to bring Kenny in real quick, because Kenny and I, as you were, Ken, were at the very, very first Haystack in Chattanooga, which was just groundbreaking. But Kenny, you had a couple of your key integrators, some of the brightest guys I know that were actually at that event. Sort of following up, what are you seeing actually in the field with some of the guys like that you deal with that were at that first meeting? Is it something that they've adopted or using? Is it become prevalent yet, sort of on a granular level, or is it we're still waiting for it to happen?
Well, I think what happened initially was you had just like any change and the evolution or the development of technology, you'll have your early leaders and the people that jump on board right away. And these were the folks, I think, that followed John Petsy, Brian Frank with Skyfound. It was an obvious opportunity there that it was kind of at a higher level. And the guys that I knew that were really invested in it have been handsomely rewarded. In other words, analytics evolved from, I think, Haystack. And if you put it in order of presentation, first it was Haystack and the concept of templating and semantics, and how all these different languages and alphabets and everything are just, they're not good for anybody, let alone the industry. And if you organize this, there's a payoff. And then the payoff was that Sky Foundry started to take roots, and it developed into a global thing. We were over at several European events, and I was shocked that Sky Foundry had developed concurrently over in a global market other than North America. We always think that, everything happens here and this is the origin and this is where it happens. But over there, they took the data real important too. And then it improved. Then you started seeing the coalescence, the collaboration. And I think, Ken, you had a lot to do with it. I think the things that you did at AHR brought the support mechanisms into place. People got to understand Project Haystack even more and even more. Certainly didn't hurt to have the corporation. They had a 501c, and it was a nonprofit corporation, so people could put money into this thing. And then you had some just really serious champion efforts. McElhaney from Australia, Richard. You had Alberto or Olsmesler from BASSG. These guys were contributing really some serious thought power into this. And of course, Brian Frank continued to steer this thing in a very positive direction. Now you have all the big corporations behind it. You have Siemens, with J2 Innovation and Finstack, and they've put all their chips on Haystack. They think that that's the only true open protocol that exists is Haystack. And you also have Tritium with the Niagara driver, and them, is probably the most formidable framework in the industry. Putting it into place so it becomes a no-brainer that Haystack and tagging is going to evolve so much quicker and faster because the major players are behind it. and it's kind of come down in cost, come down in experience. The Tritium puts 25 free analytic points onto your every single JACE that they sell to support and foment data development and analytics. So a lot of people believe, like you used to say, that data is the next oil, it's the next gold.
Well, I think you're right, Kenny. And one of the things that did happen was Brian Frank spoke on Haystack 4. There's the 4th version's out. And Ken, Ken Sinclair, you can chime in on this, but one of the big takeaways there is now it's not just necessarily tagging. Now it can be more descriptors. You're adding a lot more metadata to that packet. So even more is going to be available. Will you?
I thought Brian Frank's presentation on Haystack 4 was amazing. Again, actually, and I was glad they originally didn't have it in the original keynote opening session, and they wedged it in, and I'm glad they did, because as the excitement to see that Haystack is real and being used, and then to have him roll out is, okay, here's the next version, and this is what it does. And of course, the short story there is basically Haystack 4 includes tagging for tagging. And once one gets one's mind around that, that's pretty amazing. When he started showing us what we could do if we started tagging the tags and how we could pull information out and sort stuff by in Haystack 4, I was very, very impressed.
It was one. We actually have that video of Brian's talk up on our YouTube channel. So we'll probably put a link there in the show notes so that everybody can see that. The volume was a little soft on it, but you can hear him. It wasn't our best audio, but it's definitely worth a listen there. And I think, to our community out there, at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is we're talking about, it's not that we couldn't connect buildings and get data points out before, because we've always been able to do that, but it was just a cost to it that was usually prohibitive. And what we're talking about now is Haystack just allows a very inexpensive, affordable way to connect everything. And it costs you more not to now than it does to.
That was the common message from almost everyone, is that on these larger jobs, like, how are you doing it? You can't do it without Haystack. You have to sort all this information out. Anyway, so yeah, really, really good, and lots of participation, lots of new vendors that are supporting it to the hilt. It's interesting. We're seeing vendors arrive that basically their whole offering is based on Haystack. They wouldn't have a product if there was no Haystack. Interesting.
Well, it is, but I think that's just a shift when you made the statement about the guys saying you don't know what you don't know. I think there's you talk about that, and I think it's the theme of your article. But if you think about it, knowing is probably has you be at risk than anything else, because there's so much that's coming into our industry. I mean, you definitely have to understand what you know. You have to understand how to apply it, but you better be open to the fact that there's more you don't know now than there is that you do, if you're going to be able to compete in this brave new world.
Yeah, the interesting coming into our industry, I'm kind of looking at it the other way, which I kind of always look at everything the other way somehow, but I'm kind of seeing what's happening is we're becoming the automated intelligence part of IoT. I think the transformation is so real that we are no longer who we were. We basically have come across the floor, and people will seek out our services as those specialized IoT people that work in the building automation, building intelligence space. So I see our industry transforming. In the final analysis, the work you guys do and the work the systems integrators do, the master systems integrators, is only going to get tougher, and they're going to have more and more of it, because that's sort of our secret sauce, is that we know how hard it is to actually reach out and grab those physical devices and make them come into this data world. When we touch the data people, they know how to make this data do anything we want it to. But is that data real? Only we can confirm that, yeah, those sensors are correct, or they're not correct.
Well, so the analogy I would use is like, we're all great writers, right? Because we've been writing forever. So we understand the content. But, you know, again, and I guess when I say you don't know what you don't know, if you're trying to convince somebody to use a typewriter because you don't know computers exist, you might not still know the right words, but you're going to lose tremendous credibility if you're pushing typewriters versus computers as an analogy.
Well, you know, when you said that you don't know what you don't know, it was interesting because I had recently attended a class or training where the progress being made here, and we're talking, 9 years since the inception of Project Haystack. But now the whole industry now is jumping on board with queries, databases, learning. But the interesting thing about you don't know what you don't know is that AI now, or automated intelligence, is now going to be doing this continuous commissioning thing. In other words, you could just almost like go to sleep after you put 5 or 6 queries together and say, okay, go tell me how many valves I have that haven't modulated in the last 24 hours. And then once that's successful, you can go back 6 months. Basically, you could determine now all the things that you didn't know, because now you can ask questions through the data queries to get you information. And then once you understand where your biggest pain points are, where you're losing money, where you have heating and cooling right at the same time, and all these other sparks or whatever you want to call them, you now can put this continuous commissioning into work, and it doesn't sleep. And so it generates more critical relevant data that begins to really truly bring the fruition. You know, everything that we've all been talking about, it's coming down into gold nuggets. It's coming down into business cases where, you know, the primary 70% of the people enter the building from this side. So where are you going to put where are you going to make sure that you optimize, parking, flow inside the building? You know, if you know all these things can come together, that you just start, just thinking, hey, what's the information here that can make a better impact on occupancy, and comfort and sustainability and stuff. It's amazing that, it's coming together. And it's really, you guys have brought testament. I didn't play hooky, by the way. I had commitments. So that's why I'm this Project Haystack. But your coverage of it, both of what you guys say and then putting this together really amplifies through the industry. And I think that Controltrends and the automated buildings has done a good job trying to capture what's being said and put those takeaways in a media format that can be used and reused and understood and repurposed. It's cool stuff.
Well said, thank you very much for that. The point I wanted to make went away. Go ahead.
Well, listen, so we'll come back to that. I'm sure it'll pop in a second. So 2 things. One, Kenny, to your point, one of my teachers used to say, and he was one of Edwards Deming's disciples, the quality guy, and his statement always was, "In God we trust, and all else get data." And basically, data is the great equalizer. But and again, Haystack allows that, which you can create all kinds of efficiency. So it's not even so much about the energy savings anymore that something like Haystack enable. It is about the operational savings and everything else you can get. So that's a huge piece here. You got it, Ken?
I got it. I was off on my data scientist rant, but not being a data scientist, I slipped a digit. That was the other thing that was common at the tables and the discussions is the industry is, especially the Haystack industry, is somewhat starting to divide into the technical gathering of information people and the data scientists. And actually, your discussion there, Kenneth, was very much on what you're discovering is all the things that the data scientists know, and that's why they want us to keep this data in a completely different bin, and don't ever preconceive what you're going to do with your data, because you will never guess, because you don't know what you don't know, because inside of that data is the question that you would have never asked had you not looked at it from a data analytics point of view. And so spending some time with these data scientists and trying to understand, and then for them, the whole data scientist approach is using that data to build all kinds of cases that we haven't even thought of yet. So it's a whole new world. And of course, that is the step into machine learning and artificial intelligence is basically that link is going to be filled by our data scientists. And a data scientist is now becoming a very common employment term for the industry. And this one of the sessions I had that was great, as I got to introduce Lucy Kidd with Bruno, out of Australia. And she's just started as a data scientist and was attracted to our industry because she saw the exciting opportunity. She was originally trained in robotics, but if you read the interview on our site, the new kid on the block, which is how good is that? Her name is spelled Kidd. And so I was actually able to bring to fruition my let's involve these kids in as our younger mentors and moving forward. So it gave me a good ploy to do that. But I think that's a typical new employee for our industry. And you know, I don't know that we saw that many years ago, that we would have data scientists and engagement specialists as people in our industry.
Well, I certainly back to the data scientist thing because, you know, a company that we're familiar with, the Master Systems Integrator, is Hepta Systems. You know, Keith, I think his last name is Baker, is a data scientist, you know, one of their key people. So I think it gives them definitely a perspective on, you know, data analytics that only a data scientist could have. So, hey, I want to shift gears, go off tangent just for a minute, because we're talking about data and we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And have you guys been tracking this whole Cambridge Analytica thing that's been going on? It's huge. They're taking Facebook to court on it, but there's a group of data scientists called Cambridge Analytica, and apparently, you know, they collect data, and their mission statement is not just to collect the data and understand it. Their mission statement is kind of ominous. We're going to collect the data, understand it, and then we're going to modify human behavior based on it. And this is apparently the group that was involved with the potential of the Trump election. And, you know, they're questioning what kind of influence did they have on the U.S. presidential election. So it sort of gets back to that other side, Ken Sinclair, that you brought up before. And our European brethren, we'll talk about that when we get to the EASYIO conference, are very much aware of sort of the uglier side of all this data and collecting it vis-a-vis at the very low end privacy issues, and maybe at the high end modifying human behavior unbeknownst to us based on tendencies that are out that we don't know that we have.
Well, but you know, I think, you know, I did know a little bit about it, and when we were talking about our show here and talking about Ken St Clair's June edition, the Cambridge Analytica, but you know, the subliminal suggestion stuff and all that's been going on for you know, I guess 1950, I believe, was the first.
So this is the beginning of time, actually, but yeah, but conscious.
So the point being is that yes, and the point made by Sabrina, what was her name? Sabrina Vinesh, about the data being now and information is a $200 billion industry. Bad things are going to happen when you have large sums of money. Lord Bertrand Russell said that anytime you have incredibly large sums of money at stake, corruption has to be, you know, be a consideration, because people will do anything to get access and control those large sums of money. And he was referring back to World War I, that it lasted longer than it should have. It should never have lasted all those years, because no one was going to win, and they were doing it because they thought the industrial powerhouses were enjoying such an incredible financial windfall by having this ongoing nightmare. And so, but yeah, I think we all have to watch, and to cycle back to your June edition, Sabrina wrote about, she's a marketing specialist, but now she's talking about those very same things, how data has a two-edged sword, and how if you don't have laws and standards in place, and I think if we're going to say anything about Cambridge Analytica, that is that our government needs to step up, all governments need to step up and create an equal power base to these ad libers guys. If people could make a consortium and not have any kind of a nationalistic or whatever, you know, driven policy, and it's just a powerhouse, almost like Amazon, and it exceeds
exactly like Amazon,
all the national borders. Well, Amazon has changed our entire culture. The Amazon effect is now, you know, just taken for granted. It's going to put the small book places on, all the radio places. Everything's going to be consumed by this giant whale of a momentum that makes things more efficient, makes things easier. So on the one hand, you get your stuff delivered the next day, the toilet paper and the, you know, printer paper, whatever you need. You order it online, it shows up the very next day. And I've done it because it's just, why should I go to the driving, you know, 2 miles in the store, park in the parking lot, walk in through the store, check out for a half hour when I could just type in a request and it's here tomorrow.
Well, so, I'm going to just digress one time to get back on track. You already got the answer to this question, because you've told me And I've read it too, that Jeff Bezos, basically in his books, he says, my goal is not to make a profit, it's to destroy my competition first.
Right.
So the reason you want to drive to the store whenever you can is because, yeah, you might be getting it at an inexpensive price now, but when there's no store to go to, then your prices are going to go way up and you're not going to have a choice.
Right. But, again, in the daily world we live in with traffic, with automobile accidents, I mean, so we're all confronting something that, we all have to deal with in our time, our lifetimes, but
right.
the future. And I hope these young people that the data scientists that Ken just mentioned, Miss Kidd, could look at this objectively and make the right decisions at the right times. Because if it's crazy now, 2019, what's it going to be like in 2025 or 2035?
Right. Good point.
As you get sort of somewhat inside of the heads of some of the younger folks and see what they're thinking, the social side of what they do is becoming much bigger than we ever. I remember being in our meetings and stuff. So quite often I go to meetings and half of the meeting is spent talking about the social side of collecting the data, or whether that's something that people want, and the engagement of the community. So I think that is sort of somewhat self-healing, I guess. My concern is that much of what we have in North America came from the Wild West.com world, automated buildings being one of those things, and there's a million other things that just kind of grew in an unstructured, unformatted world, and we grew extremely fast. We came up with some incredible capabilities to do some incredible things. I am very, very concerned about government getting involved in this process and immobilizing. And I think that's one of the big concerns of Europe right now, is that they potentially can be immobilized. And there was a tweet that I posted a while back from the top guy in China, his name escapes me, that basically runs the equivalent of their Facebook. And he says, I'm concerned about Europe, because Europe's going to tie themselves into a position that they won't be competitive, because they'll be socially correct but not be able to move. And I don't know, somehow it all works out. It's like Asian culture. You go into an Asian city and you cannot imagine how this city can function. 15 million people all in one place, driving, running, biking, and hardly anybody gets killed, but it all works. It's just organized chaos. And, I think within that spirit of organized chaos, I think we can move ahead faster. And I kind of believe that it'll be self-healing as we start to get people misusing it. As long as the people have the same power, they will design systems to push on them out. And the only big thing is my fear is we will no longer have a totally open internet, where we're heading towards an internet of countries, and a lot of division there.
Well, I think it's very well said. And again, I like to contradict myself, especially in the same interview here, or same session, is that on one hand, I was referring to what Elon Musk said about artificial intelligence and how there's no standards. There's no committees to put boundaries around something that could be, so threatening, and it's at its furthest extreme. You're not getting science fiction oriented here, but there's been some publications, and Eric and I have read them, where if artificial intelligence goes unchecked because it had no structure, no boundaries, no limits, it could take on a dimension that's not intended, not desired, and certainly not favorable for mankind. On the other hand, I agree with you. Letting that organized chaos loose, I've always been a fan of that. So I see contradictions in my own statements. On one hand, certain things have to have some sort of a ceiling to them, or guardrails. On the other hand, I agree with you, is that if Uncle Sam or any uncles, Uncle Fritz from Germany or whoever, tries to come in and impose, the boundaries without, and stifle free thought, and then that's also a terrible problem, and it's going to be a challenge.
For sure.
Well, it is.
I'm not sure we're going to solve it on this interview.
Well, we might.
It's like we might get confirmation here.
we might, because we haven't even gotten to your June edition yet. So, I think in there's a lot of good insights. Kenny's alluded to a couple of them, Ken, but again, just put a ribbon on Haystack. Congratulations to John and Mark and the rest of the Haystack team for the great job they're doing. That happens every 2 years, so you won't get to see them next year, but the year after that. And Kenny and I and Ken Sinclair will keep you posted, give you plenty of warning so you can make it there. But hey, it's June 1st, and it is time for hearing about the June episode, the June edition of Automated Buildings. Ken, tell us what it's all about.
Okay, really pleased with this issue because we built on the theme, you don't know what you don't know. And of course, I get to learn lots of things every time I take that approach. I'm real pleased with one of the articles our contributing editor, Nicholas, wrote. It's called Rest in Peace BACnet. And he basically has a dialogue that he's been having online with a bunch of folks on LinkedIn. So he actually talks around that, and the conclusion is BACnet's still pretty important stuff. Is again, within this controlled chaos that we live, things like BACnet are a bright light, and things like Haystack are a bright light. Basically, then it's followed up with the next article, which is from Pooping Yale at Optigo, and he's talking count your assets before they are hacked. And then we had the one that Ken was referring to from Sabrina. You don't know what you don't know, and she talks about how we really need to question this. But one of my favorite ones is one that Skip put together, Women in Control. And he just did a great job of reaching out and interviewing some powerful women in our industry. And it's just a tribute to them, and they are a tribute to us, and their attitude of wanting to be mentors and help us grow our industry with young women coming out of universities, and encourage young women to go into universities and colleges to train to become into our industry. So yeah, lots of stuff going on there.
Well, and Skip, I guess, is a technical recruiter, so he would certainly have his finger on the pulse of trends regarding recruiting, because I know one of the biggest challenges all of us have, and everybody I talk to, is finding good people. And Ken, I would like to just take a minute and sort of go through some of these folks, because I recognize a couple of these names. One of the first one is Dana Haggerty. Dana works with Intech in Atlanta. I've known Dana now for about 15 years, and she is a powerhouse. She's phenomenal, does a great job for the team at Intech. So I can definitely speak very highly of Dana because I know her personally. I'm sure all these women are incredible. I can only talk about the ones that I know, although I'd like to meet the rest of them. So maybe we can get them to come on the show at some point in time. And of course, the other one Kenny and I are very familiar with is Gina Elliott. And Gina runs EASYIO North America now, and is a phenomenal individual, brilliant. Ken, not only does she do controls and brilliant marketing mind, she has a publishing company that she does. She actually went to school to be a warden, so she just knows all about the law, and just a fascinating, multi-dimension person. So I feel really privileged to know her. But who do you know?
I'd have to credit Gina with sort of probably getting this going as long ago as 4 or 5 years ago at an AHR meeting. I kind of remember we're standing in the lobby of AHR, and it was Gina and Therese, and we were just talking about women in control. And I think from that, we've been picking away at it, and we've had some strong leaders, certainly out of the Controlcon event, Scotty Cochran's event. He's got a strong stable of ladies who basically keep him on track and basically help push the industry from that side. The big thing I'm seeing is that we need to grow fast. We need to grow now. And we have resources, I believe, in the wings of all of our companies, women that are almost trained because they work every day with funny control numbers that we all need to know, and they understand our industry. And basically, with a bit of job crafting, I think they can turn into the stellar people like are outlined in this interview.
Well, I think that's very well said, Ken. I think it's, again, just to kind of talk our side, Controltrends Awards has always really, truly begun to really understand the importance. And we began, I think, back in 2014, but again, just some of the names that popped up in the Women of the Year thing. Well, Tree Sullivan is now with Tritium, but she's an amazing person, amazing voice. Renee Joseph, Jenny Graves, Suda Jampney, Stephanie Zakowski from BizTech was Woman of the Year 2018. But I agree with you so much that the woman in the wings, I mean, imagine I lived in Germany for 9 years and knew some very professional women that the ceilings were placed on them professionally to the point where they actually left Germany, went to other countries, South Africa, and they went from being the assistant CEO to the CEO. And to get that, they had to escape, the limitations of the culture. But just want to give the rest of the women that were identified in that article a shout out. Casey Crown, the Sunbelt Controls, Diane Fritz, the General Manager and Vice President of Trinity Automated Solutions, Irma Kemp, she's the Project Manager for Sunbelt Controls, Rodney Stratham, Business Development Manager for Train Account Manager at Linkspring, Erin DeFries, she is building automation and HVAC controls for over 20 years. She now is with, she's an application engineer. The company isn't identifiable in here, so I'm not having trouble finding that one. Jeannie Elliott, we mentioned, and Shara Peralt. But anyhow, the rest of them are here on your website. And the important thing that I cut after reading each bio here and the comments they made were, it's not about them. I mean, here they are, they're getting some spotlight, they're getting some recognition for an incredible career. And they take that opportunity to defer that attention to other women in the industry, but also the industry itself. And it's a great place to work. It's a very serious, exciting, challenging profession. And we had one reference on the percentages, 1.4% of our industry, our HVAC building automation industry, is comprised of women. So there's certainly growth there. We need more resource. We need more intelligent young people in the business. And we hope that the opportunity for women in the HVAC and BAS continues to improve, and we develop more programs and more recognition to achieve that.
Actually, I just want to, at that point, just quote a thing from my editorial here, and it's called "Propagating Our People Power is an Ongoing Challenge. To grow our industry younger, we need to get our message out that we are an exciting industry in which young folks can make a difference, and offer them job crafting and promote job flexibility as the game changer to attract them. As first adopters, we tend to bear the brunt and the cost of the education curve, but we're the ones that eventually make new technologies affordable, accessible to all. We need to tell the world why they want to be part of our passion. And I think this is just an underlying message of us all, is that we need to get this kind of information out to the universities and colleges. And this whole concept of job crafting is a real thing that attracts the folks. They don't want us to tell them what their job is. They want to tell us what their job is going to be. And in that, you'll be amazed at the creativity that will come out of that discussion.
Well, you just need to check out our Young Guns podcast with Brent Burrows and Aaron Gorka, because they are an interesting group of cats. And I think that maybe one of the things, the alarm bells that goes off my head when you say you got to let them decide their own job, is you kind of think, well, that'd be crazy. They wouldn't want to do anything. But when you listen to guys like Brent and Aaron talking, some of the other younger folks, if they're inspired, they're going to work harder than anybody you got.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly it.
But they're
so
not.
It's a difference. It's a difference if we don't change our attitude and how we and our appeal. I think we really have to change our appeal, because we've been a pretty rigid industry in the past, and in a lot of ways it's been an old boys network, and we have to certainly change that. And as we invite more data scientists, more engagement specialists into our industry, that's what we're going to need.
Well said. In fact, I was ready to put a sign in my front yard: vote for Ken St Clair for Because I mean, it sounds like you're up on a soapbox, but you're not, and it's refreshing, it's fun, and I think we're seeing the needle move. I think we're actually seeing progress. I feel it, like to your point about the Project Haystack, you can feel the momentum, the critical mass is growing, it's getting bigger, it's starting to have magnetic, and gravitational pulls. I think we're doing it. I think this, every time I hear you restate that, I like it because it's becoming a more honed message, a more relevant message, and it includes more important aspects that include, and the job crafting thing, I read that, I'm still kind of, to be honest with you, I was like Eric at first, the concept of allowing somebody to decide how they're going to do work at your business is certainly challenging for people over certain cultural references and ages to deal with. But I agree with you. And the biggest example I remember that was at a Johnson Controls ABCS conference meeting down there. It might have been in Arizona, but you were there. We were there, and the woman had expressed to us that Johnson had invested so much money in recruiting the top talent in the world, not just in North America, but the world. And yet they were losing a certain percentage after 2 years. And then in the out briefing, when they terminated their positions and they were leaving, they get the person there and they sat them down and said, what was the biggest problem? And it was remarkable how it was the first time there were 4 generations of people in the same work environment. You actually had people from all these different generations, and how they clashed. But the biggest example was when this senior executive CEO was walking through the office on a kind of surprise visit, and he saw over half the people in the office on their phones and playing with some sort of smart device. He went back and was furious at the operations manager and said, what's going on here? I didn't pay these people to come and play games. He said, they're not playing games. Sir, they're not playing games at all. Our computer systems are retardedly slow, and they're using their bring your own device to get the information they need to do their jobs because we've requested an upgrade to our network and our system. So it just showed how the polarity there of understanding, the senior executive not really and truly understanding that new technology was bringing his people online quicker than what they were providing them in the work center.
So yeah, I got a question for Ken Sinclair, because I think, and I don't know if you have data point on this or not, but maybe we get one of our data science working on it. So one of the things that's a little fearful for me with sort of, roll your own job, so to speak, or, create your own job is it. The other thing that I'm understanding is that they're going to change careers 4 or 5 or 6 times anyway, regardless. And you said something, Ken Sinclair, that is so true. And my business, for me to get somebody trained where they can be useful to somebody else, I have at least $250,000 invested in them. So, I'm just wondering if you heard that. I mean, are they going to stay? Even if you let them have what they want to have, are they still going to stay? And if not, is it fair to say, hey, we're going to let you sort of create your own job, but in return for that, you're going to guarantee X amount of years that you're going to be here, because the cost to get them up to speed where they can be useful is so high?
Okay, there's a lot of questions there, and I'll try and get a lot of answers. The first point I want to make is this: the job crafting fits in very well with the you don't know what you don't know. Is when you hire this person, they have some incredible skill that you don't even know about, and it's not on your agenda, so you don't care. And they happen to be the world's greatest salesperson or the greatest PR person in the world. And they love people. They'll do all the education things for free because they love doing that. So if they point that out as one of their job crafting superpowers, then that changes how that's going to go. Back to the thing. How do we keep them? If they've defined their own job, they're more likely to stay in it. And what they will do again is they will recraft their job. And so after a period of 1 or 2 years, at that point that they're being restless, they'll come back to you and say, I want a new deal. I want to recraft my job because I don't like this part of my job. I love this part of my job. How can we recraft it that works for the company? So this moves us forward. The other thing that I think everyone kind of misses is that when you invest in training somebody, the power of where that person reappears in our industry, people hardly ever walk out of our industry once they come in. And I think that's a big message to these young folks that are looking should I come into the automated intelligence industry, is if you take our track record, the people change jobs because they want more money, they want to move to a new location, they have a million reasons, but they don't leave the industry. The fact they don't leave the industry, is your education really wasted? Because now I've got a person that used to work for you for 4 years, 3 years, 5 years. He goes to a new company. He knows your company inside out. He's probably, if he goes to a systems integrator or something, he's probably going to use your products. It was probably the best investment you ever made. And I think that's what Brad is finding. Brad is finding that these people are very true. They've actually had very, very few turnovers in their 30 folks. And the ones that have gone are basically, they're a consultant and they've gone to organizations where they still use SES as a consultant. So isn't that kind of nice to have one of your people inside of one of those companies that's helping you,
Right.
Sell your wares? So
No, go ahead.
the whole musha, how that goes is.
Well, in that situation, yeah, it's an advantage. More likely than not, what happens to guys like me and Kenny, distributors, we invest the money and get somebody up to speed, and like I say, $250,000, $300,000 into it. And then one of our competitors on the distribution side comes along and goes, okay, now I get a trained person. They offer them $20,000 or $30,000 more, which is nothing because they don't have to pay to train them, and they're gone. So, but that problem's been around since day one. I don't think that's,
Well, Ken, I saw Eric Scorman in the seat. And I knew he had to come back with that because it's happened 2 or 3 times, I think. But listen, the point being made, Ken, again, I applaud your spirit, and I also had recently heard something similar about the benefit. The benefit is not a selfish benefit. It's an industry. It's a ubiquitous benefit, and the more people that get into a certain level of expertise, the whole industry benefits from it, and the industry that we all live in. In other words, I think we talk about things and we get close to some real interesting challenges that our industry is facing. And one of them is that if we don't do a lot of this ourselves, we don't get whatever the newest trends are, whether it's job crafting or whatever, if we don't get this stuff in place and we don't get people involved and they don't come with all this expertise, it's going to be taken from us. My biggest fear is I fear a blanket of technology that's kind of moving real slow, like a fog, like a cloud, and it's coming over top of us, and it's looking down at what it can extract from our industry. So that if we don't push up and we don't develop the talent, we don't develop the expertise and the IT skills or whatever, we don't push back and at least put some kind of ceiling on how far we're going to surrender a lot of our data and a lot of our industry, then we're to blame. So I think whatever makes sense to make the industry stronger, make it more attractive, get our share of resources and intelligent people involved in it, and then let them start pushing their talents through our building automation industries and through even our manufacturers. I think are not doing well. They're not coming to the forefront as the big mighty five that they used to put stakes in the ground and said, this is our domain, this is our industry. We're seeing just the extraordinary push from some of the multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar companies that are looking over top and like a satellite, they can do an X-ray into our industry and see exactly what they want, and they're putting things into place to get the data. And so I think the things that you're doing here and the things this June edition does is it brings to the center stage where we can make improvements, learn things, and move forward and make better decisions. But I think the job crafting would be something we should keep coming back to and get some examples, because I think it's a fascinating concept. But again, being in my generation and whatever, I haven't encountered a use case that really we could take and explore it. Say, yep, this is definitely how we could do this here or do this there.
Okay, well, I wrote an article called "Job Crafting Our Industry Ambassadors," and this kind of came out of going to Detroit and looking at what the Bedrock people were doing. And the thing that amazed me is how well they sold what it was they were doing. And what the other side of that hit me on the head is how bad a job we do as an industry selling what it is we do. I mean, you got your little company and you do what it is you do, but how do you basically sell that to the IT industry? How do you sell that to consultants? How do you sell that whole, you need this industry ambassador who's basically just enthused as like your product, but he's also is able to answer all of those questions and how the new people are going to go. The big advantage of allowing these new job crafted folks into your organization is they basically start to tell you how they see your organization. And it's like, oh my God, we don't want to look like that. Well, that's how you look to me. Am I missing something? And I think that's how the change will occur. We've got to change. There's no doubt. The way we do business is going to turn around radically. And bringing these new people in will make it change quicker. Having ambassadors who basically can explain the essence of what our companies do and how we fit into the new direction, the new millennium, I guess, of how this is all going to come together, is important stuff, I think. And we've got to, all I know is that if we kind of keep involving these people in it, it's going to go a different direction. But we still have our core values. All of a sudden, they start asking the questions is, well, how do I connect this to a Honeywell valve? And then, yeah, okay. Now we're.
What's a valve? I'm supposed to connect this to a valve. What's a valve?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right. But we need to build bridges between where we're going and what's going to happen to us. Because I think that's the other thing is the cloud that Kenny sees coming. If you're not doing anything, it's just going to fall on you and absorb you. If you're there to meet the crowd and you've got it all figured out how you're going to fit into this new WeWork kind of environment, I think it'll be a whole lot easier transition.
I agree. I like that. Yeah, good.
And I think part of it is you got to stay informed. Ken Sinclair is obviously, Notre Dame Sinclair. You're out front. You're sort of shedding lights in the dark corners that we have ahead. And I would say that you're probably not going to figure this out right away. And what you figure out is probably you have to refigure it out as you go forward, because I think that's one of the constants we have is there's no more constants. So I think one of the strategies you're going to have to adopt is you're always going to have to look and you're going to have to question, are we relevant? How are we playing? What needs to happen now? And again, I think that's where your younger people can be a great barometer for you. But then they get old like Brad White, and Brad's an old guy now, so you got to go younger.
Well, that happened fast, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Young guy to old guy here in like 5 years. No, Ken, to your point, and you know what? You'd have been proud of me because I used autodidactic learning in a meeting the other day, and people definitely their mouths dropped open. I said, yeah. And I was saying about how the just-in-time learning and how the concept that we were playing with was how do you provide remote support to a deployed field in anything, not just HVAC and building automation, but medical, mining, whatever. There was a couple of really sharp people in there, how they were using wearable technology to solve some of the things back when Eric and I were following this. With who's the guy with the glasses from Google Glass, Eric, that we interviewed?
Dave Lorenzini.
Yeah, Dave Lorenzini. So that was probably 7-8 years ago. And now to see some of these use cases where these people were using this technology, and I see that coming in our direction too. I can't help but think that could solve so many things.
So Ken, we're going to see you at REALComm Ibcon. I mean, you got a couple of sessions going on there. Can you tell me what you got happening?
Yes, I've got a great one called Autonomous Interactions, Integrating the Occupant Experience into Smart Buildings. And it's part of the Systems Integrator Summit. And they give me the dream team. I've got Scott Cochran, I've got the CEO of Comfy, and I've got the product expert from Distech. And then they give me 30 minutes to use all of this talent and at the end of the day. So it's kind of a mixed message, but I'm sure it's going to be an exciting presentation. Later, the next day, I believe it is, we have a session connecting to the enterprise, the fast world of HVAC. And I've got Joseph of Amador Consulting out of California speaking with me. We're both going to try and talk about that. And if you kind of let your minds just roll, all the things we're talking about are now falling on the OEM, the original equipment manufacturers, and they have to figure out whether they're going to use BACnet, whether they're going to use wireless, whether they're going to use Bluetooth, whether all of these things that they didn't really have to deal with. So they're looking to us for advice as to how this should be done. It's going to be an interesting time for sure. Looking forward to REALComm.
Well, we'll see you there, big dog. So listen, sort of summing up, Ken Sinclair's June issue is out. Again, one way to know what you don't know and then eventually know is to follow automatedbuildings.com and hopefully Control Trends. Ken, we will be seeing you at REALComm Ibcon come up in Nashville. It's still not too late to get there. We have a discount code on the Control Trends site if you want to go. So with that, Ken Sinclair, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Kenny, it's always great stuff from Ken Sinclair. You got a couple more important things we want to make sure the community is aware of before we hop off. So let's hit it.
Sure. Real quick, new Optigy Enterprise and Proton version 2.4.6 released, and this has critical updates for OE and Proton 2.4.6. So for all the Optigy folks out there, please get this software update loaded up as soon as possible. And also, we have the Niagara Forum, London, 2019, to be held June 9th through the 11th at Park Plaza, Westminster. And that's going to be another great European forum, another great show. I was on the website. They got some great speakers and a lot of good things. Mark Peacock and Link Springer heading over there, and they're excited. So we're enjoying seeing this interplay between North America and Europe, and now the world's getting smaller.
And Kenny and I would have gone, but our wives won't let us. They say enough is enough. So, all right, with that, Kenny, I mean, great. If you get a chance to go over to London, check it out. Hopefully Mark Peacock will be our in-field reporter in London, and we'll be able to get you information on that as well. We will be at REALComm Ibcon. That's one thing we'll be reporting on for sure. So if you happen to be going to that conference, please come up and introduce yourself to us. Kenny and I love meeting people that listen to the show. If you'd like to be on the show, you can click on a link on the right-hand side of the website called Be a Guest on the Show, and we'll get you on. We currently have about 15 people lined up, so we're going to have a lot of interesting guests coming up. And then, Kenny, again, a special shout-out to our first sponsor. DG Lux is back. And here's a Trivial Pursuits question for you, Kenny Smyers. How many Control Trends Awards winners trophies did they have for being the best visualization platform of the year? I'll give you
3.
It's more than one and less than 100.
3.
You got it. They've won 3 times, and I have a feeling that now that I have a feeling we're going to hear a lot more from those guys. They are re-engaging with our community, so be sure to check them out. Remember, there's a free demo there. And if you're interested in being a sponsor for one of the shows, again, you can reach out to us at CT for Control Trends Marketing Pro at gmail.com. That's CT for Control Trends Marketing Pro at gmail.com. We got a limited amount of sponsorships we're willing to put up. And hey, Kenny and I, we're going to start paying some bills now. We paid our dues, and now we're going to pay our bills. So with that, Kenny Smyers, special thanks again to our sponsor, DG Lux, and to our guest this week, Ken Sinclair from AutomatedBuildings.com. Be sure to check him out, and the June episode is up. So remember, Kenny Smyers, be bold, stay in control, be relevant, and job craft something.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed. Kenny Smyers.
Well, that's also thumbs up, like to let them live, right, from the Coliseum?
Oh, yeah. We didn't want to take the thumbs down, that's for sure. All right.
We'll learn there, though.